Informed Choice Radio, episode 516 with Karen Mangia, author of Working from Home.
Live from Sundial House Studios, this is Informed Choice Radio. Want to make the most of your money and your life? You've come to the right place. Now, here's your host, Martin Bamford.
One feature of the COVID-19 pandemic is a huge shift towards working from home. With government's advice to work from home if you can, millions of people are facing this reality for the first time. But what are some of the challenges associated with remote and flexible working? My guest on the podcast today is Karen Mangia, author of Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You. As a member of the leadership team at Salesforce, Karen has played a pivotal role in creating technology-enabled virtual experiences and insights. We know that offices are carefully planned work environments that emphasise focus and productivity. But what happens when you're trying to get work done at home, when the kids are off school and the dog is barking? And what happens when you take working from home to the next extreme and decide to relocate to a different part of the country or a different part of the world altogether to secure an even better work-life balance? Here's my conversation with Karen Mangia, author of Working from Home, in episode 516 of Informed Choice Radio. So Karen, welcome to the podcast. Perhaps you could start by introducing yourself, tell us and our listeners a bit about you and about your background and what it is you do.
Well, thanks so much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm Karen Mangia, and I am Vice President of Customer and Market Insights at Salesforce. So my whole career has been in the high-tech space, and I have the opportunity to spend time with our customers all over the world, understanding challenges they're trying to solve or, innovation that they're trying to break through and what role we can play in doing that. And, as part of my role, I have an opportunity to hear a lot about what's trending. And a couple of those very timely topics right now are how to help people be effective at working from home in this context that we're all operating in, and also discovering new ways to connect with customers. So I get to share some thought leadership in the form of blogs and books and kind of take what I hear on a day-to-day basis and make that practical and actionable.
Fantastic. Now, working from home, I guess, has got an interesting history. It's got some connotations attached to it, but we've all been catapulted into a situation where working from home is the new normal. But prior to the pandemic, what sort of things were people telling you about working from home? What were some of the connotations attached to it?
Well, before the pandemic, we were in a constrained talent market. Right? If you think back before everything shifted with the pandemic and unemployment numbers rising significantly because of that situation, many organizations were challenged to find enough qualified people to hire. And so when you start thinking about attracting and retaining key talent, virtual work and remote work and distributed work can be a strategy to help attract that talent, because when people do not have to choose between their life and their career, when they can have both, right, and have that autonomy and choice, it can be a wonderful tool for attracting top talent and also attracting a more diverse talent pool. And so organizations were thinking about how to put that in place as a way to, attract and retain talent, and also maybe discover talent in other parts of the country or the world. And then also just really thinking ahead to the future of work. Most organizations, as they look out on the horizon 3 to 5 years and try to think ahead to the operating models that help them be successful, have started to realize that, work doesn't have to be a destination, and offering employees autonomy and choice can be a tool to help them show up at their best and be able to change the context based on the circumstances in which they're operating.
So it's fair to say that many employees and particularly top talent wanted to have that option to work flexibly, work remotely, work from home. I know not all employers were entirely comfortable with making that shift and accommodating that. So maybe a few thoughts on that as well, Karen.
Well, many companies have this go to the office culture. And I hadn't thought as deeply about why that is until I was doing a session a little bit like this with a longtime CEO of a company. And he said, Karen, when I read your book, when I read this, working from home book, he said, it struck me that I'm a CEO. He leads a very successful company. And he said, I've never had any training about how to lead a workforce I can't see in person. And I hear that so frequently from leaders of organizations, especially senior executives. Right now, 43% of people are working from home for the first time. And within that population are CEOs and people who lead human resources and people who lead, very large sales teams. And so part of the challenge is, we all go into our comfort zone, right? And if what's comfortable and what is your norm for work is, I see my employees and that's how I motivate them or get the best out of them, it creates a natural resistance to say, hey, as a leader, I'm going to have to change how I communicate, how I engage, and maybe even what I expect if I have to vary that leadership style or where work happens. And so one of the big inflection points that's happened as we've all shifted into working from home, in full or in part during this period of time is so many senior leaders are discovering working from home is actually work. You're not necessarily just playing with the dog and making dinner or, changing out the laundry. It really is a lot of work, and that the activity of communicating in this virtual world, especially as a leader, is so fundamentally different. I mean, over communication is just communication when you're working from home. And so, as this period of time has continued, so many organizations are pausing to say, do we have the right communication structure in place and outcomes established to be effective, as a team or as a leader or as an organization in this context?
And, the pandemic clearly has served as a catalyst for many people, for many organizations being forced to make this switch. I'm not sure where you are in the States at the moment with this, but our current guidance here in the UK is work from home if you can. I'm sat currently in my shed at the end of the garden, which I built back in the summer because I was tired of sitting in my bedroom at a desk. I have an office a mile away up the road, which I'm not using because the government guidance says work from home if you can. So many people being catapulted into this situation, many for the first time in their lives, and that for I guess a great many of employees and employers is quite an uncomfortable realization. So what are some of the things you've heard about being forced to do this experiment, almost this work from home experiment?
Yes, there's a whole continuum, right? I mean, we have people like healthcare workers and grocery store workers who have to be in person to do their jobs, certainly, right? And many manufacturing companies as well, right? If you're making something, you usually have to be somewhere. For others, we hear a whole continuum, right? There are some companies that have announced working from home until the end of the summer 2021. So a very extended period of time. And in fact, at Salesforce, if I went to the office right now and put my badge at the door, it wouldn't even work. I mean, we've deactivated people's badges to, help you with that temptation in case you decided to try to go into the office. And then we've got a number of organizations, of course, who are in the middle. It's kind of a hybrid model. And so what I think is critical is, thinking about what it takes to show up at your best in this context where the future looks uncertain and the scenario could change from time to time. And something that you hit on for yourself is so critical, which is work needs a place. So whether that is a small corner of your bedroom or you've built a shed or sometimes you go to an office, work needs to happen in a designated space so that it doesn't show up all over the places that you used to relax or interact with your family. So the first thing is, as we're thinking about whether you're going into your company's office or being at home, put work in a dedicated space. The next piece is it's so critical to put routines, rituals, and boundaries in place to help you and to signal to your brain, I'm getting ready for work, I'm going into work mode. And then at the end of the day, if I don't have a commute to and from a physical office anymore, or need to pick up the children from childcare or, meet up at the pub or go to the happy hour, what's my leave work routine? And ideally, just a few minutes of that transition and putting something in place that works, whether you're going into your office or working from the coffee shop or working from your home, really helps put some boundaries in place so that we don't find ourselves just working all the time.
Yes, yeah, that's key, isn't it? And that transition between the end of the workday and the start of the family day for many people. I mean, something I do at the end of each workday is I go for a walk for an hour. So I take the dogs out and have a buffer almost between my working time and my evening time with the family. And that for me has been very helpful. But not everyone is fortunate to have their own space. I mean, if you're living in shared accommodation with other people, young adults, for example, you may be forced to be in your bedroom the whole time. So for people who can't make that separation between their family space and their working space, what tips have you got?
Well, I'll never forget the time when I posed that question to someone who was living in that exact circumstance. And what he showed me, he picked up a small tabletop, I would call it, that was a little larger than a dinner plate. And down the center of it was a piece of tape. And what he showed me was, when I'm sitting on this side, I have my laptop and I'm doing work tasks. I'm taking meetings. I'm responding to emails. I'm perhaps creating PowerPoint slides or content. And then when I'm finished with work, I move to the other side of that piece of tape. And then I'm reading a book or I'm, watching some kind of a video or I'm communicating with friends. And in that very small space, it was about creating a very clear delineation about moving from work to home. And, it was as much about giving work a space as it was to have a ritual that said, as I physically shift myself, I'm also mentally transitioning into a new mode, which is I'm not at work now, I'm relaxing. So even in a very small space, it is possible to find a way to leave work there and not travel with that device you're working on all over your space, whether that space is small or large.
What about productivity then? Because something I found in the early days of working from home during our lockdown back in March, April time was I was incredibly productive and I was really proud of myself for rattling through tasks every day, finishing early. And over time, I felt that edge away slightly and my motivation was falling away. I think it was because I wasn't having that same physical interaction with people on a day-to-day basis and I wasn't separating. And maybe that's improved for me since I've started working from my shed rather than from the other side of our master bedroom. But what can we do to keep ourselves motivated and to keep our productivity levels up?
Well, you've described it. The reason that we felt we had endless time and energy is because the beginning of the pandemic was fueled with adrenaline, right? I mean, we were all battling this mysterious foe of an illness out there. And we were all in this whatever it takes mode, whatever it takes to keep ourselves safe, whatever it takes to make it to the supermarket and get what we need, whatever it takes to do our jobs well. The challenge is adrenaline wears off. And so the phase after that became the honeymoon is over. I mean, you said it. You can work from your bedroom. Is that great? Suddenly all that energy is gone and you look at the magnitude of the tasks and it's, you're asking yourself, how can we do all this? Your children are e-learning at home. The dog is barking. Somebody always needs something to eat. This is exhausting. And now what I hear people asking is, how long is this going to last? And it's not that any of us know the answer to that question, but what I hear within that is, what do I need to adjust? Because now time has filled itself in and our calendars look very full and our to-do lists look very full. And absent that adrenaline, it's that feeling of fighting a losing battle. Like I'm always in motion, but I'm never getting enough done. And so something I found to be really helpful are 3 questions, maybe a bonus 4th question to really step back and assess what's important and what needs your best time and energy at this point versus what you might be able to transition or stop or pause or at least not do this second. Questions. First, does it have to be? Second question, does it have to be me? Third question, does it have to be me right now? And then the bonus question, does it have to be a meeting? Because the reality is, if everything is important, then nothing is important. And because time filled itself in so quickly, I think we've reached a point where we all just need to take a brief pause, kind of ask those three questions and consider what's important, what does success look like now, and then how do we put our best energy toward that?
No, that makes a great deal of sense. Thinking about the future then, you mentioned some organisations expecting not to return to physical workspaces until maybe next summer. That's certainly what we're hearing as well. There's no expectation of going back in the near term. I think there was for a little bit, and now we're probably easing off that idea. Who's going to hold the balance of power when it comes to that return? Will it be the bosses who maybe want people back in the office, or will it be the employees who have had a taste of this freedom, of this better work-life balance, who have made it work? Where do you think it's going to be a conflict, isn't there, at that point?
Yes. What we're really solving for in that conversation is a trust gap. Because for most leaders, I mean, what they're asking is, how do I know my employees are working? And maybe within that, how do I know my employees are working on the right things? And we have all these employees, especially people managers, who are asking, how does my manager know how hard I'm working? Right. And so when you put those things together, I mean, there's this belief that if we're in the office and I see you working, well, then I know you're working. It's not true, but we like it. It feels comfortable. So I think what we have to solve for is that trust gap in the middle that says, as a leader, how do I put some things in place to, first of all, clarify what I'm expecting and what outcomes people need to deliver? How can I revisit some lines of ownership and maybe give people an opportunity to have greater ownership of things that are important to me as a leader? And then how do I put some tools in place that help with that collaboration, that help with that visibility, so that everything doesn't have to become a meeting or some kind of micromanagement activity? I mean, leaders will always need to know that their employees and teams are producing outcomes. That isn't going to change. I think we have to think about how we get there and make sure that we're all clear on the outcomes we're expected to deliver. From the employee perspective, a big piece of this overwork is, hey, unemployment is high. Not a lot of people would like to be out looking for a job right now. So there's this frantic activity of like, I will do everything that I think my manager might be interested in because I think it will help me be visible. And this is the source of that burnout, right? I mean, activity without a sense of purpose is what gets you to that burnout. Like, I'm doing all this and I don't know why I'm doing it or if anyone even cares. So I think really the conversation that we need to have is, how can we build trust so that whether we're in the office, in our home office, or some combination of both, we trust each other that we're doing the right work and getting things done and delivering what the business needs and feeling acknowledged and recognized in that process.
Taking the sort of working from home thing to the next level, to the extremes almost, I'm starting to see people who have realized, well, now I'm not tied to a particular city, particular geographical location. I can work anywhere in the world. And I'm seeing tourist boards as well. So Portugal's a good example, who are running adverts now to attract people to move to Portugal, because you can work your London city job on the Algarve coast and you can have a much better lifestyle. You can have the sunshine, the fast internet connection, etc. So where does that sit with employment if actually you're not just working from home a few miles down the road or 20 miles away, but you've moved to a different country, a different continent?
Many cities and countries are putting those kinds of incentives in place. I mean, some are using this as an opportunity to put out even tax incentives to get people, who have these jobs to be able to relocate, because what they see is an opportunity to diversify the community and also create economic sustainability. So this is happening at the city level, it's happening at the country level, and it's really an opportunity to go back to what we were talking about earlier, right? To enable people to live well. And as they're living well, they tend to show up better at work, right? I mean, we're all in our best work selves when things outside of work are going well, and we feel good about the choices we're making, and we're not draining our lives away in these endless commutes back and forth. So yes, it's both a tool for very smart cities and countries that are trying to, change the profile and, attract more people to your area. It's also a tool for companies who, are at that place in the evolution of their culture and their distributed work environment to say, sure, work from wherever you feel you can have your best life. I think what that does require is, though, overtly having that conversation and making sure that the culture is set up for that.
Yeah, because there's a risk, I guess, as an employee, you could end up moving to a different country and living on the beach and working, and for a while at least, your employer may not even realise it's happened, depending on that level of contact and communication you have. But yeah, have the open, honest adult conversation first.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Certainly ask. I mean, this is a time to err on the side of asking questions and getting curious and really communicating about that. And I think the other thing too is, asking your manager, asking your team, what do we need to put in place, or what are our new team agreements? As many people in the team might be considering some of those kinds of changes. And for some people, that change is driven by a need or a desire to get closer to family, right? Perhaps go back to where you're from or get some additional support during this period of time where people feel isolated, and it is challenging on so many levels to manage everything that's happening in life.
Karen, it's been a pleasure chatting. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Before I let you go, how can we find out more about the book, and how can we get in touch with you?
Yes. So you can find me on Twitter at Karen Mangia, and also on LinkedIn. You can find Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You online, whether that's Amazon or at your favorite book resellers. And then I also just launched another book during the pandemic called Listen Up, How to Tune Into Customers and Turn Down the Noise. Also available at those same places. And I look forward to hearing what everyone's discovering as you're working from home, because the reality is we're all learning together how to make this work, which means everybody can contribute some kind of idea that we could all benefit from or consider as we're trying to figure out how to make this work well.
Karen, I'll make sure I put links in the show notes for this episode to the books and to your Twitter as well, so our listeners can find those easily. But thank you so much for your time. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Have a great day and stay well.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Do check out our show notes at icradio.co.uk for useful links, including a link to Karen's new book, Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You. Here at Informed Choice, our financial planners help remove stress about money by offering a clear explanation of your choices and options. We help people just like you find the answers to the big financial questions, making sure you can live a meaningful life as a result. Please do subscribe to Informed Choice Radio in your favourite podcast player to get a notification each time a new episode is published. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, please do consider leaving a written review or a star rating. You can listen to the entire back catalogue of more than 500 podcast episodes at icradio.co.uk, and you can find out more about Informed Choice at icfp.co.uk. Thank you again to Karen for being our guest today. Our producer for this episode was Emma Hill, and our editor is James Spooner. Until next time, I'm Martin Bamford, and this is Informed Choice Radio. And remember, when it comes to your money, the more you know, the faster it can grow.